Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of the Brett and Matt Show. As always, he's Brett, I'm Matt, and this week we are doing our NFC and AFC East previews before the NFL draft. So with that said, we'll just get right into it. The Dallas Cowboys have the 4th overall pick, and it's pretty unusual for them to be picking this high, but obviously the injury to Tony Romo had a lot to do with that.
Des Bryant as well.
Yeah, Des Bryant was obviously hurt for a long time. The loss of DeMarco Murray in the offseason probably affected that. So the Cowboys have several areas of need, whether it be on offense and defense. Where do you see the Dallas Cowboys going? Do you see them doing something that could maybe impact them on day one of this season, or do you think they look to the long term and, maybe try and draft that quarterback of the future at pick 4?
I don't see them going quarterback, at least not at 4.
Really?
I mean, yeah. At some point in this draft, they should draft a quarterback, but I'm not a big fan of them going 4 now. I can see them going like a second, third round guy to develop because they still expect, hopefully, if Tony Romo can be healthy, to get another 3 to 5 years, I think. Jerry Jones has said 5. I think Jerry's crazy. But, like 3 or more years or something like that out of Tony Romo. Let a guy develop. You got to draft a developmental guy versus going for it now. Because I think if Tony's healthy and he plays like Tony can, you have a team that's at least, if you do this right, get a couple of impact guys, a playoff caliber team.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, hey, for the few people that watch the show, we do not agree all the time, okay? I think the Cowboys should take a quarterback, either Goff or Wentz, who's ever there. If neither's there, fine. Then you look elsewhere and you take a different player. But if Goff's there at 4, I really think you pull the trigger there. Just in my opinion, I think when you're picking that high, I understand like getting the impact value for a day one guy, but you don't typically pick that high for the Cowboys, and you don't always get a shot at a franchise quarterback. Look at the Bears, right? The Bears struggled at the beginning of the season. Like, I would work with a couple Bears fans, and they were actually saying, hey, if the season continues to go bad, we're going to get a really high draft pick. We can draft a quarterback to replace Cutler, sort of thing. Now, because they did win some games, they're probably too high unless they want to trade up. They're probably too low, to be able to take either Goff or Wentz. So my point being is that if one of them's there at pick 4, I think I would pull the trigger and take them, but that's me.
And that's not a bad idea. And I saw earlier on Twitter, let's see, I think it was Tony Pauline. He's a guy that works, he's a draft kind of insider, and he says that Dallas, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and the New York Jets all want to move up to number 1, which is a pretty good indicator, Dallas being part of that group, that they are very interested. Philadelphia, too, who we can get to in a minute, but they're very interested in, taking a quarterback with that 1st overall spot. So it is very possible for them, to instead just take a guy at 4 if they're unable to move up, if one of those guys is available. Now, if somebody trades up, takes Wentz, you got to think Cleveland is taking the remaining quarterback, whoever it is. So then Dallas would be kind of out of luck there and have to attack some other needs on their team. Yeah,
they would. So I've seen a couple, and I don't know. I've seen that he's flown in for a visit, did a workout with the Cowboys, but it seems too high in my opinion. But at pick 4, could you see a guy like Ezekiel Elliott going to the Dallas Cowboys?
I don't, even though I've seen some mocks having him go there. And it's not because he's not good enough. He's one of the 6 best players, I think, in this draft. But, they have McFadden, and they also brought in Alfred Morris, and they re-signed, I think, like Lance Dunbar. They've already got probably 3 guys that are going to be on the roster that they should expect to get contributions from. So I don't expect Elliott to go there, though. I don't know how much time is left on those other deals. It could be a deal, where he's just the guy that they draft and let him play it out next year after they release McFadden or something, if he's got any time left.
The nice thing is, if you're the Cowboys, you are at pick 4. We've mentioned, there's probably 5 or 6 elite caliber players, you're gonna get one of them if you stay at pick 4. So I mean, really, and you're looking at if Jalen Ramsey falls, you're gonna get an impact player there, a need. If Joey Bosa's there, you can draft him, a need. Really, I mean, Miles Jack. So I mean, I just named 3 guys that aren't quarterbacks that
I'm
there's
guaranteed to
and
be
golf.
there.
You're guaranteed to get an impact player at pick 4. So either way, I mean, I would expect the Cowboys to go one of the directions I just named. I'm assuming, well, they wouldn't draft Tunsil anyways because they're stacked at the offensive line.
Yeah, they won't obviously go line. That's probably the one spot on the team that is pretty set. Maybe they want to draft somebody at some point to take over at right tackle. Maybe that was supposed to be La'el Collins, who they've moved over to left guard for now. So I'm not really sure what their plans are, a couple years down the road when Doug Free is no longer there. But I think their most immediate needs are probably corner, defensive end, and defensive tackle.
I agree with that.
In which case, you probably have who? In those needs. Like you said, Ramsey.
Ramsey. I mean, if they want to draft Buckner, he would be there.
Osa maybe. And then Hargreaves.
Yeah,
Hargreaves is also a guy that could go ahead. I think 4 is probably a little high for Hargreaves, but hey, they took Travis Frederick way too high, and people thought that was way too early, and that worked out well. If you got a guy rated high on your own board, hey, it's the best center in the league. All right.
What? Best center in the league?
Yes.
You sure Corey Linsley's not better?
I'm positive on that. Positive.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah. So, and I also expect them at some point probably to go defensive end, or tackle, because my boy, I know he's a Wisconsin guy, but Nick Hayden is still there, and he's still being forced into the starting lineup consistently, and I don't think they appreciate his production. So maybe they'll finally upgrade defensive tackle as well and move Nick Hayden to like a rotational kind of spot. What do you think of Dallas's wide receiver situation, by the way? I mean, obviously they have Dez. They've got some other hit and miss. I mean, they signed Cole Beasley to a big deal, right?
They signed Cole Beasley to a pretty good deal. Jason Witten's not getting any younger. Escobar is a good number 2. Still not sure if he would be the number 1 type guy, but maybe he's probably got the athletic ability to do it. Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden, Terrence Williams, I think he's a good number 2 receiver. When Dez is healthy, he kind of disappeared when Dez got hurt, though. Obviously, I mean, he's not a number 1 caliber guy, and probably needs a receiver opposite of him, like Dez, to take pressure off of him, so he gets more one-on-one matchups. I mean, they could use a receiver. Maybe in round 2 or 3, if there's someone there, they take them. I mean, they should have a pretty high second-round pick, I would think. So, I mean, if they want to use a pick on a receiver, they probably can. But yeah, I guess I wasn't really having receiver on my radar for them, at least early on.
Yeah, me either. It was just kind of like an observation.
Oh, sure.
In defensive end, like I said, I think it's probably going to corner or defensive end. All right, Randy Gregory.
Yeah, corner
is
defensive end, they could use help.
Yeah, Randy Gregory is suspended, and if he gets caught doing drugs again, he's going to be suspended for even longer. So it's probably a pretty good bet that they should at least grab somebody in the first 3 rounds, maybe even 2 guys along that defensive line to kind of be rotational guys. And then if something happens for a suspension or whatever reason, Nick Hayden obviously retiring soon, they'll have the depth for all those guys to stand up and be starters.
Definitely. So with that said, moving on to the next team, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles obviously have Doug Peterson as their coach. They made a ton of moves to clean house, trying to undo a lot of Chip Kelly's moves. So now they've cleaned house and kind of got things shored up the way they want. Where do you exactly see them going in the draft? Do they necessarily go after a need? Or, I mean, they have lots of needs, so they can probably take maybe the best player on their board and fill a need, right?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we look at 2 years ago, Philly had probably one of the best lines in football. Then last year, it was among one of the worst lines in football. Some guys left, they cut some guys. Injuries had a little bit to do with that as well. Um, they addressed those needs, I think, in offseason. They signed offensive guard Brandon Brooks, brought in center, I think it was like Steven Wisniewski. They also brought in Rodney McLeod, who's one of the better safeties in the league as far as being a tackle and cover guy, which is good because I love Chris Maragos, but at that point he probably would have been thrust into the starting lineup. So let's just let him be the special teams ace he is and make his money that way. But yeah, if it was me, if possible, I would like to see them. If Miles Jack is there, I think that would be a great pick. I think they need some
If
help
he's there,
at linebacker. Yeah,
I agree. He's not going to be there, is he?
I don't know, man. Hey, you look around at some different mocks recently. I've seen him going. Two of the mocks I checked out recently to number 10 to the Giants. So, if it is possible, he could be there at 8, which I think is Philly's at 8. So, I mean, if he's there, I think that'd be a good fit. Now, I think Philly likes their linebackers better than I do, but frankly, I don't really like many of them that they have. So, Jack would be a pretty big upgrade.
I got to say one thing quick. I know we're talking about Philadelphia Eagles, but did you just see this trade that just happened?
What?
So Adam Schefter has just reported that the Denver Broncos have traded Ryan Clady for a 7th round pick to the Jets for a 5th round pick. So sorry, I know we're talking about Philly, and we're obviously going to talk about the Jets, but apparently the Jets just filled their left tackle void for at least probably you don't need to go left tackle in the 1st round anyways, but we'll get to the Jets later, but I saw this and I was like, wait, what? Like literally reported 5 minutes ago.
Oh, wow. Okay, and that also is good for Denver because they were up against the cap, so releasing that cap space is a bonus for both teams probably, especially since Clady's been hurt.
Yeah. Anyways, so back to Philadelphia. I mean, we mentioned I don't know. I could see the Eagles. We're gonna get to the Giants here in a second. I could see them. So there's a slew of teams that I could see Ezekiel Elliott really fitting in good with. And I mean, you look at what the Chiefs did. I assume Doug Peterson's going to try and mirror that with whatever running back he has. And Elliott would be a really good fit in that kind of offense. I mean, he's arguably one of the better pass blocking running backs to come out in the draft now for several years. We know what kind of runner he is, and he can catch the ball. He could essentially do a lot of the things Jamal Charles is good at. I really think I wouldn't be shocked if Philadelphia pulled the trigger on him. Let's put it that way.
He is one of the guys that I had on my target list. Basically, I only had 2 guys here right away, considering the needs that I had for them. The biggest ones being guard, running back, linebacker, and safety. I said Zeke and Miles Jack would be like the 2 targets that if they can get one of those guys, they should pull the trigger on whoever they like better.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we've talked obviously throughout all our previews about how deep defensive line is. If a guy like Buckner's there, that might be a good fit as well for Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm. And they're moving back to the 4-3 from I think they played 3-4 recent years, so going back to the 4-3, which probably fits a little bit better with their personnel and everything that they have. Connor Barwin and they got Brandon Graham over there rushing off the edge. So that'll be actually a pretty good, hopefully a good setup for those guys.
Yeah. So with that said, moving on to our next team, we just talked a little bit about the New York Giants. So they're at pick 10. So Elliott actually said when he visited New York, he said, he's like, yeah, me, Eli Manning, and Odell Beckham Jr. He's like, we could win a Super Bowl in a couple of years or whatever he said. But regardless, I mean, the offense can be really explosive. It could be super explosive with a running back of his caliber. I think that would be a good fit for Elliott. But if I'm looking other ways, I mean, obviously the Giants, we all know they spent a ton of money in free agency, a lot of it on the defensive side of the ball. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if this was an offensive pick, whether it be to upgrade the offensive line at maybe a tackle position or some other position, maybe receiver. I don't know. Where do you think the Giants go?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I think that's likely going to be offense. Wide receiver is a good fit. Offensive tackle might be a good one as well, where you have guys like Ronnie Stanley could be there, Conklin, or if you need to go inside the guard, you could have a guy like Cody Whitehair. And at wide receiver, you should have probably your pick of
Probably your
receivers.
pick or receiver. Yeah, I agree. Treadwell should be there. I mean, if you want a different receiver, like they're gonna be there, I think.
So I mean, they definitely need a receiver because they lost Ruben Randall in free agency.
Yep.
Victor Cruz, I don't think the kid's ever played a full year like him. It was really fun and exciting when he was healthy, but he hasn't been for a long time. So they could definitely use a wide receiver as well. So um, I'm thinking, oh my God, Marshall Newhouse is a starter for them. So
Oh, maybe they should draft a tackle.
So yeah, maybe they go tackle. That's not a bad one. Honestly, despite spending a ton of money in free agency, they still have that linebacker need, which I feel like we've been saying that again forever. And they could still probably use a safety as well. So maybe if he's still there early second round, a guy like Carl Joseph is one of the better cover safeties, which would pair well, with Landon Collins.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny. So the Giants have not drafted a linebacker in the first round in a very long time. And for all I know, Miles Jack could fall to them and they'd be like, nope, we want someone else. um, I mean, you're absolutely right. Inside linebacker is still a need. I don't think they draft Reggie Ragland that high, especially just knowing their track history with inside linebackers. Um, so I don't know. I really feel you brought up Newhouse. Maybe they do go offensive line. I was actually the more I was talking about it and thinking in my head, the more I thought, they would have their pick at whatever receiver they want. They already have one really obviously elite receiver. It could be really good. We mentioned earlier about Treadwell and how we think he needs a good quarterback. Say what you want about Eli Manning, but Manning has played better in Ben McAdoo's system. So I don't know. Maybe they look to receiver, but either way, I think it's offense. So moving on to the last team, the Washington Redskins. So, I mean, obviously, someone had to win the NFC East or whatever you want, NFC least, whatever you want to call it. Washington far from has a few holes, right? They have quite a few needs. Where do you think they go?
For the Washington Redskins, well, at least they were able to keep Cousins, right? So they franchised him, going to give him one more year to prove that he is a guy that they should keep around for the next 7 to 10 years. And they did pick up a potential starting safety in free agency. Other than that, it was pretty quiet for Washington, which I think is fairly rare.
Yeah,
which is probably, yes, like you
probably a
said,
good thing.
probably a good thing for them because they always make some really awful signings. I think probably the trenches is where they should go. Defensive line, or center, which center is probably a little bit early, for where they're at. I don't really see any of them currently being a first-round center, but like we said about Travis Frederick, maybe they do. Ryan Kelly, Jack Allen, those guys are for later in the draft. But defensive line, I'm going to say Jaron Reed. I think he would be a really good fit for them running that 3-4, or a guy like Andrew Billings out of Baylor.
Yeah, either one of those guys. Yeah, I could definitely see both those guys going to Washington. Do we think? I mean, at the skill positions, they did lose Alfred Morris, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they upgrade the running back spot at all?
They had that Matt Jones out of Florida.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Last year he had a couple really good games, so I'm thinking they're probably going to just stick with him as like a starter, but they probably could use a second guy to go with it.
Yeah, otherwise another name that might be interesting fit would be Chris Jones, defensive tackle at Mississippi State. Either way, I mean, you and me both seem to be on the side that they'll probably address the defensive line as they have a need there, and it's a good draft if you need a defensive lineman to be able to pick one up. So with that said, We'll move on to the AFC East, and we'll start off with the Buffalo Bills. Um, so the Bills, I mean, you look at their needs. They obviously on offense, they have Sammy Watkins. Could probably use a receiver opposite him, right?
Yes, they've got a. I feel like they have a lot of wide receivers on their depth chart, but none of them are any good. I mean, Robert Woods. I maybe we're being a little bit harsh and for him being early. Was it his second year, third year, whatever it is? So I mean, there's still potential for him to get better, but they no longer have Percy. So wide receiver could be a need. I don't think that they addressed it this early. I don't think they go first round with that. I'm leaning more towards. I mean, they lost. Mario Williams, right?
Yeah, they did. So I mean, maybe they get a guy like Shaq Lawson out of Clemson, or someone to fill. They need someone that can rush the passer.
Absolutely, they need a guy, and they could also use probably a right tackle. I know they drafted Cyrus Kouandjio and Stroncho Henderson a couple of years ago. Not sure either one of those guys is the answer. We were actually really excited for that. But whoa, you get two tackles, one of those guys is going to hit. At least I remember thinking that. So you should be solid, and maybe not. So yeah, I mean, I could see them going again, either right tackle, which I feel like right tackle is always kind of early when you're just drafting right tackle. But in the new NFL, especially with Tyrod Taylor, that guy is not a big guy. You don't want him taking hits, even if it is from the front side.
And you bring up, is it too early to take a right tackle at I think what are they, pick 19 or whatever they are? Yeah, pick 19. Is it too early to go there? It might be a little early, but if you get a guy that you think can be a stud right tackle, especially with the Bills, and they're I feel like of NFL teams, they tend to run the ball a little bit more. So if you have a guy that can be a really good run blocker, because that's what Rex Ryan wants to do, it might be worth pulling the trigger there. Otherwise, we talked a little bit just briefly about it a second ago. Wide receiver, I think, would be a good option for them to go. I actually think I really like Tyrod Taylor. I think he can play. I think he's has the potential to be a really good quarterback. I think they need to get more pieces around him currently.
So are you saying you would lean receiver, or would you protect him first and then go with
I think I would lean receiver, and I think I would draft an offensive lineman in the second round if someone's there. But, I mean, at pick 19, you should be able – I mean, Treadwell's probably gone, but you should be able to –
is probably maybe gone.
Yeah, I mean, he might be gone, but there should be either Coleman or Doxson. You just mentioned Fuller. He could be – I mean, one of those three I would think would be there when you pick. Because I'm looking at our draft list a little bit. We talked about how Minnesota and Cincinnati both could really use a number 2 receiver as well. So they're probably hoping that someone's there. So I think they look to add another weapon for Tyrod Taylor personally.
Yeah, that would probably be a pretty good pick. I think if it was me, I'm so torn. I'm a trench guy, which is weird because I'm a little guy, played skill positions. But I'm all about the trenches. So if they can get offensive linemen, or even better, a defensive lineman, especially because, I know Kyle Williams has been solid and Marcel Darius is really good. But Kyle Williams is 32. Not sure he's going to be around much longer, and we just lost Mario Williams. So they should probably get some guys to fill up front, I think. So if Ashawn Robinson is there, I think he'd be a good pick for that defense.
Definitely. Moving on to the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins, obviously, they've been kind of making a few trades. They made some trades this offseason. They lost out in the running back game a little bit. So obviously, with all the making fun of we've done of them losing out in the running back situation, if Elliott's there, he is a realistic possibility for them. I know we've said it a bunch this podcast, but he would be a good fit there. Taking him out aside, though, I think a guy like Darren Lee, who's really shot up draft boards, he could be there, outside linebacker. They could also look, I don't know, do you think they could look corner at all? I mean,
I think
Grimes left, right? Grimes went to Tampa Bay.
They traded for okay. So here's my take on the Dolphins, and yes, corner for sure is somewhere that I would look at least consider. Um, like you said, this team was sort of active, like the free agency and trades. They had a few signings, couple trades, and I think they got worse through all of it, right? So they signed Mario Williams and Andre Branch, who are downgrades from Olivia Vernon and Brandon Shelby. They also traded for Byron Maxwell, who's taking over for Brent Grimes, and Kiko Alonso, who ended up being cast off in Philly, right? They let Lamar Miller go, didn't have a running back replacement. They tried, they failed. A for effort, I guess, maybe. Um, so, yeah, as active as they were, I think they ended up getting worse so far this offseason. But absolutely, corner, I think, is a big need. You know, you got William Jackson III, you got Hargreaves. One of those guys should be there at, what are they at, 13? Kevin Dodd could be a good guy to put up front. And then maybe in the second round, because I think they also need an offensive lineman. Joshua Garnett's a guard, is where I would probably look second round. But did you see Charlie Casserly's, I think it was his, somebody on NFL.com just released a mock draft today.
No, I did not.
And he had Philadelphia and Miami trading picks. No, they already traded those picks. Why would they trade them back? I'm so confused by what he was thinking.
Did he forget that they already traded picks?
I don't know, man. Like he had that pick, and then I think when they traded up, Miami ended up taking Ezekiel Elliott. So I mean, you're right. He's a fit and a need, but it's just weird that Philadelphia intentionally would trade up to 8, and then Charlie would say, "Nah, they're going to trade back out of 8." Maybe it's because
Miami calls them up and says, "Hey, we're willing to offer you more stuff again."
Right? This is kind of like the draft day movie. You know, it's like draft day. We're gonna make a trade, and then I want my pick back, and I want more stuff than I gave you. Like that is like this is like real life draft day, and I don't see that happening. So they're probably missing out in all likelihood on Ezekiel Elliott unless they can find another trade partner that's not Philadelphia, because that just won't make any sense.
I would agree with that. The only thing that really makes it hard for me to try and place Elliott is just the fact that the running back position has been kind of diminished. I mean, last year was the exception, right? Like you had Gurley and Gordon both going in the first round. But overall, like the last few years, like running backs just haven't been drafted high in the first round, and so that's the only thing that makes it really hard for me, because I'm still in that mindset that, Elliott, although, he's a great prospect, like I just wonder I wonder how you like tell yourself, okay, we're going to pull the trigger on Elliott and not draft this guy in the second round that could be close maybe to him, right? Like how I don't know how you like decide that, right?
I don't know if anybody views any of the running backs as well. Okay, well, there's also Derrick Henry.
Henry has been climbing up, right? And now I know, Alabama running back. Say what you want about red flags. I've always been under the mindset, and I was this way with Wisconsin running backs too, right? I've always been under the mindset that I try to take the running back for their own person and not for for what necessarily the school is for, right? So the school's known for producing really good college running backs that have mixed results in the pros. I don't know. I'm trying to view Henry in his own world and not comparing him to Eddie Lacy or Mark Ingram, especially Trent Richardson.
Who's getting a shot? Who's getting a shot with Baltimore?
Oh, my God. Yeah, just to be a practice dummy. Come on.
You're actually probably right.
I'm just saying. You're right, though. You're right. Like, Henry's what? He's got to be the number 2 running back, right?
I think he is, and I think a lot of people are looking at him late first, early second. I mean, if he doesn't go in the first 40, I'll say 41 picks, because there's only 31.
That'd be surprising, round. I think, if he didn't go.
I'd be pretty surprised.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And that's what I mean. Like, so that's this perfect example, right? We're just talking about the Cowboys at pick 4. So the Cowboys don't draft Elliott, and they draft Bosa. And then all of a sudden come back in the second round, they get Henry. That looks really good.
It does look really good, but the problem is you don't
have their quarterback at all. Like I said I would.
So there's that. Well, maybe, and in this scenario, we're thinking that maybe the Titans trade out of one, and the first two quarterbacks are already taken. Maybe Paxton Lynch should have been there for Dallas, by the way, in the second round. Would you have taken him instead
No,
of
I
the
don't
running
like
back?
Paxton Lynch.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I like
I,
Goff and I like Wentz. I want one of those two.
okay. Well, I just was throwing out the potential there. But for me, I don't think any of them. Okay, so as far as like run protection, receiving out of the backfield, and his agility and everything else, a lot of people like we mentioned it off camera. Maybe it's kind of outlandish to say, but the best running back prospect in the last 8-9 years, since Adrian Peterson. Like, if that's how you viewed, if you were an evaluator and you evaluated him as such, where would you draft him?
Well, I mean, Peterson went number 7, and that was even back in an era where running back was still, considered. I mean, you're talking about a guy like Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown were going like 1 and 3 or whatever they were. Like, I mean, in that era, I feel like the running back was still viewed really high. But if I'm a team and I have an opportunity, if I can like see into the future and know Elliott is going to put up similar career numbers to Adrian Peterson, well, shit, I would take him number 1 probably.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is like, as a prospect, that's where they're at. I don't know where they view a guy, like Derrick Henry. But for me, even if you get a Todd Gurley, right? Todd Gurley went 10 last year. If you can get a guy that's going to be as good, some people think a little bit better than Todd, maybe not much higher, but a little bit better. I know that St. Louis still sucked, but it wasn't
him.
Todd Gurley's fault. I'll tell you that much. I think, I think you draft him. If you view that he's available and worthy of a top 10 pick, regardless of it being a position that's devalued. Because you look at a lot of other guys that get drafted in the second and third round, also don't necessarily pan out. It's still kind of a shit show. You randomly get like 4th, 5th rounders that do, but a lot of the guys in the second and third aren't necessarily great either.
That's a good point. So with that said, I mean, obviously Miami could go running back. I think we both tagged them with cornerback being a need. So I would if Hargreaves is still on the board, I would really expect them to take him personally.
I agree. If he's there, that's got to be the pick.
Moving on to the New York Jets. So as mentioned earlier, right? The Jets just announced this trade. They acquired Claddy from the Denver Broncos. So now they essentially have someone filled in for the left tackle spot. Do you think they go left tackle in the first round still?
Probably not first round. I mean, I still had tackle as a need. I actually had left tackle and right tackle, both as needs. So, I mean, it's still possible now that they could go with again, we mentioned it, right tackle depends on where you value them, but they're at what, 19?
No, they're at 20. The Bills 20? Are at 19.
Okay, right. So, yeah, they're back-to-back. So, are the Bills also the team I said could take a tackle? Right. So, maybe one of those teams is probably going to take a tackle. Obviously, Buffalo gets first crack at it. If Buffalo takes the guy that the Jets want and it's not going to be a tackle, I'm going to think probably a pass rusher. I know their defensive front's really good. I know they just lost Damon Harrison, but they're still pretty stacked up there. Leonard Williams, Muhammad Wilkerson, a few other guys that they actually signed in this offseason. So I think a pass rusher, though, like a legitimate pass rusher, could be that guy. Like Leonard Floyd, if he's available. Noah Spence, Shaq Lawson. There's a few different guys that fit that outside linebacker pass rush mold. What about quarterback, by the way?
I was actually just going to bring that up. What about quarterback, right? You just mentioned Paxton Lynch. I don't know. Do the Jets – because right now they still – Fitzpatrick's still a free agent.
They have Geno.
They have Geno. I don't think they need receiver. Brandon Marshall, Eric Decker, they seem pretty good there. So – yeah, quarterback, right? Maybe it's – I'm not a huge Paxton Lynch guy. I think he needs work. which I guess from Brett, from your point earlier, that was why Dallas would be a good fit because he wouldn't necessarily have to start right away. Um, I don't know though. I mean, I do think the Jets. I just think that the quarterback position gets overdrafted because of how valuable it is. So I don't really think Paxton Lynch necessarily should be taken at pick 20, but because of how, if you have that kind of need at QB, you kind of almost have to roll the dice and hope it works out. So the quarterback could be an interesting pick here.
Or maybe you just draft a bunch of talent at other positions, let Geno tank, you gave him his shot, and then next year you just draft a quarterback.
Brett,
No one wants to go.
You said yourself in an earlier podcast that is the worst thing teams could do, was have a garbage quarterback and put all this talent around them, because then you're stuck in no man's land if you don't have a good quarterback. And you're picked too low to be able to get one without having to, trade considerable assets to move up to be able to take an elite caliber one.
I think having Geno Smith guarantees you a top 10 pick.
Does it though? Does it?
Probably not, honestly, but
maybe they have a lot of talent on the team though. Well, you're probably going to lose to New England twice if you have Geno at quarterback, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that. And I don't know what their schedule is like, for the out of division games, but I mean, quarterback, obviously that, like we mentioned, is a pretty big need. Maybe they also could go inside linebacker because they're getting a little bit old there. Lost some guys recently, so I could see inside linebacker being needed. It's weird for me to want to make them draft a defensive guy with their first pick, considering defense isn't really the problem. But pass rush is a big need, and having guys in the middle of the defense is a pretty important thing as well. So I think they probably go defense first. But if they like Paxton Lynch, I'm okay with them drafting him.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, man. So with that said, the last team who technically doesn't have a first-round pick for Deflategate would be the New England Patriots. So since they don't have a first-round pick,
what my actual target says right here? For my targets, first-round targets, an air pump. That's what I actually wrote down, air pump. So, if they had an air pump, man, they would have been all right. They'd still have their pick.
So this is interesting. So New England doesn't have a first round pick, obviously, due to Deflategate. But apparently the league would force the Patriots to forfeit the earlier pick if they were to trade into the first round. As a result, at number 29, Carolina, number 30 got Denver, and number 31 are the only likely trade partners. So in other words, it sounds like the league would make them give up something if they try to trade up into the first round.
They can do that?
I guess. I don't know. I'm just reading something.
Wait, what is it? So if they trade up to, say, 22, does that mean they have to forfeit the 22nd pick and then they get the 29th pick back? Or
I'm going to read it again, see if it makes sense. So Patriots don't have a first-round pick due to sanctions. And apparently the league wouldn't force the Patriots to forfeit the earlier pick if they were to trade into the first round.
So that's what it sounds like. You'd have to.
That's exactly what it sounds like. The NFL. How else can we make Patriot fans angry?
That is honestly, right, not a Patriots fan, but that is some bullshit.
Well, okay, so I mean, looking at this now, so I mean, obviously they're a pump joke, but realistically, right? Patriots with their first pick in this draft, we've been hitting it on it all the time. I mean, they don't have a ton of needs. They could probably use some help along the offensive line, though, if anyone is there, because I mean, Tom Brady just took even for him, he was taking a beating, and how quick that ball gets out of his hand. He was just asking him against Denver, man. They were teeing off on him. The other area I think they could address is obviously defensive line. What about a guy like Robert? I'm not going to be able to pronounce that guy's name. The defensive tackle from Ole Miss.
he would be a good
Because of
fit.
character concerns.
He'd be a good fit, and he might fall.
You might.
Yeah, 'cause they have I think they have back-to-back picks in the second round, which I think is like 60 and 61 or 61 and 62, something like that. But I think he could be a potential fit. Like you said, offensive line, Tom Brady took a beating. I think they're okay for now, for like the near future at tackle. So if they're going to go offensive line with any other picks, it has to be at guard and center. I know they just traded for Jonathan Cooper, who helps out one guard spot, but he's in a
Correct.
contract year, so it's his last season on that deal. Maybe they signed him or will sign him to a longer term, depending on how the season goes. And they just signed Chris Long to be a defensive end. But obviously he's in the back end of his career, probably maybe got like 2 or 3 years left. So they could also use a linebacker to team up with Hightower and Collins. So it's basically kind of like the defensive front seven, and then the offensive line on the interior is where I'm looking. They're also a team that maybe could use, I don't know, they got like 11 wide receivers on the roster right now, but like the only one that I feel super comfortable with is Edelman.
Obviously, Edelman's good. They did sign Hogan, though.
They did sign Hogan, who was actually pretty solid wide
Yep.
receiver. I mean, Nate Washington, but he's probably not going to even make the team if I had to guess. But so they have a lot of guys. They probably won't waste a draft pick on a wide receiver now. They'll just wait until after camps to see if they can find a guy, because they're usually pretty good at finding guys that fit specific
what
roles.
they want to do. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so with that said, that wraps up our NFC and AFC's previews. So next week we have AFC and NFC West. And then what? We have 2 weeks before the draft, I think? Or 1 week? No, 1 week.
When is the draft? Is it the
28th.
23rd or the? Okay. Yeah, so that'll be. We'll have.
So next week we'll do the AFC, and then we have 2 weeks. So maybe
one of those would be our mock draft. Will take up one of those as well.
We do. So we'll just have to decide if we want to split up the 2 weeks into 1 week covering like the first half of the picks and the other half covering the second half, or if we want to just do one mock draft all in the same show. We'll have to figure that out. See if we want anyone to join us, or we're just gonna be you and me this year.
Right. I don't know what Cortland's up to.
I have not talked to him since he gave me that workout that killed me. But yeah, so with that said, we got one more set of divisions to go through, and then it's all of a sudden mock draft time. So until next week, thanks for tuning in.